Welcome back to Two Unemployed Actors. I'm Max, and in this episode, I'll be talking to Jye Currie, director and producer of the documentary The Promise, following the mental health journey of one Craig Hamilton. The Promise is also nominated for an AACTA award for Best Documentary. So, welcome, Jye Currie.
Two unemployed actors, two unemployed actors. They're just between projects.
Thanks for joining us, mate. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I know you're in the middle of really selling the documentary at the moment. I mean, there's lots of publicity, and I see events for The Promise, followed by Q&As and that sort of level of engagement, which is great. So I appreciate you taking the time. My first question is, why docos?
I guess I just want to make movies. I don't really mind if it's a fiction or a doco. When I heard Craig's story, there was something that I heard him say that really stood out to me, and that was that not many people were talking about suicide prevention.
Yep.
So I had a look at films, obviously, after hearing that, and realised there weren't many suicide prevention docos.
Yeah.
So we, obviously that sparked a thought with me, and we got together and made the short film, One Conversation, and we put that out on YouTube and just like a little project, and people wanted more. So we put together a proposal and a budget and just sent it out. And I actually went backpacking for about 4 months and was in the middle of my trip. And I was 4 months into my trip. And Craig rang me up and said, mate, we've got a budget. You're going to have to get back here and we're going to make it. So we, turned it into the feature.
It's great. And I think, did you have in mind, a feature documentary when you did the short?
Yeah, I guess we didn't have... we weren't invested in we had to make this a feature.
Yep.
That was obviously something that we both wanted to do if the opportunity presented.
Right.
After making the short, everyone wanted it.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of really went quiet when it come to getting the budget together.
It certainly does help in the industry to have something to show, some existing IP, if it's not based on a book or a remake or whatever, at least... I know some creatives who are out there doing short films as like a proof of concept. Standalone, they can enter it into competitions and stuff and get some people talking about it. But it's another way to sort of step into getting their first credit at times on a feature. So I think it's a great achievement. And I mean, it's interesting what you said about how there aren't many features out there, scripted, non-scripted, around suicide prevention, around specifically mental health. As it's become more of a conversation, I feel, in the community, in the workplace as well. I've got 20 years of corporate behind me as well. It certainly always was a part of a conversation, not always a big part, not always as big as it should be. And sometimes all it was a conversation. It's a virtue signal where the company wasn't really backing it up. So with that in mind, I mean, I can't think of anything that... certainly Australian... that
there's a couple that I've seen, but they haven't done... I think we've done something different in the sense of we've got real stories from people. We've got someone who's survived a suicide attempt.
Yep.
We've interviewed people that have lost loved ones to suicide. People that have just struggled through suicidal thinking. And then we've also just got general advocates. So we've kind of... And we've got New South Wales Health. We've got New South Wales Police on board. We had that many... I guess, areas to the doco that I think has made it really unique.
Yeah.
As opposed to just hearing just Craig's story or just having just a general suicide prevention film. We've kind of really tapped into, we've got leading researchers talking about some statistics and talking about the health system and stuff like that as well. On
the statistics and the health system, I think, and it's certainly great to have that perspective in the doco, as well as a really great personal story, as challenging as it is sometimes to hear. The statistics, I think, one that stood out for me was out of every 100,000 Australians, 20,000 will have a challenge with their mental health at one stage or another, but there's only 95 psychologists for every 100,000 and 90 mental health nurses for every 100,000. So that really stood out for me.
Yeah.
It acknowledges that it's a huge problem in the community, but also that we're under-resourced. What sort of important message do you think you want viewers to take away from seeing The Promise?
I guess in terms of what we want people to take away is we want people to know that we want to give people hope. I guess Craig's story is a story of hope, and we really want people to know that if they do talk or talk out, there's people that are going to listen, and there is a way moving forward. I know sometimes in the midst of it all, it might feel hard to want to talk or to want to do anything in moving forward. It's really the last thing that you're got going through your mind at that time. So the film is to really set up them conversations before it gets to that point, when people are in a good headspace and in a good frame of mind, have conversations with their loved ones or their GPs or whatnot, and basically set up so then if they ever get in that bad headspace, there's already a plan in place. I guess our goal with the film, your other question would be, we just really want as many people in Australia to see it as possible. I think the film will do the work it's supposed to do. It's just a matter of now of just getting everyone behind it to just sit down and watch it. It's an hour of their time, and I think it's going to be educational as much as entertaining for everyone that watches it.
Yeah, totally. I think if we can go back to how it sort of started, even when you were in your mind thinking about approaching the short film, did you have a grand plan, a vision, and have everything down on paper, or did it kind of evolve on the journey?
Just evolved on the journey for the short film. It was a matter of me and Craig sitting down doing an interview, and I just wanted to see what I kind of got from that, and then that obviously led to what questions I was going to set up in terms of when I was interviewing, because in the short film we had Paul Harrigan, we had Jessica Rowe, and we had Professor Francis K. Lampkin, who were all featured in the feature version as well. But going into their interviews, I obviously had questions and written down that I wanted to, a bit more of a plan of attack after knowing what I've got from Craig, and then just B-roll, and that was just relevant to whatever I already shot, and that was just run and gun. So that was just me directing it, editing it, lighting it, doing the sound, everything on that.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, it was just putting in all the work, because we didn't have a budget and we weren't going to try to, that wasn't the plan for that.
It really sort of evolved, started snowballing.
Just put it together. So, but it was good enough for everyone to really get what they needed out of that and to grow it into what it is now. So
imagine you in trying to achieve, all those roles just to get stuff done, because you've got to, because it's only you really. It's like, are there things that you learned that you wish you could go back and tell yourself before you started?
Definitely. I think that's just the beauty of growing. Like with my short film Victim, it was the same thing. There was like a crew of 3 or 4 of us. And we're all wearing like 6 hats each. And it was what it was. And we film ended up winning like 11 international awards, and we were all so stoked. And then we're like, let's make feature film. So same thing, the crew got bigger. But then so did all the responsibilities, and we're all just wearing multiple hats again. But it's I guess what I noticed is like, I want to go and direct $100 million film.
Why not?
But who's going to trust me with the script?
That's it.
What investors are going to trust me with that? So wrote my own script and self-funded my first feature, and just got like a lot of, I'd say 90% of the crew, maybe 95% of the crew were all first-time filmmakers. But it was a matter of, we're going to do this and make something and put it out there and keep moving forward, or we're going to sit around and wait for this day to come.
The phone rings and someone says, here's a $20 million budget for you.
And when's that going to happen? So it was just a matter of just doing it, like just making it happen. Just making it happen.
I think that's a great mindset and attitude. And over the episodes, we've touched on it from all sorts of creatives and other actors. You can't just wait for the phone to ring. You've got to get out there and just make stuff happen. And I applaud anyone who's making original creative content. Like, just get out there and do it. Like, as you said, even with just 3 in the crew, you still managed to pull off 11 awards. It's not bad.
Yeah, we're all happy.
I bet. Punching above your weight. It's great. And speaking of which, punching above your weight, like the cinematography and even the audio, like it really complemented the narrative on The Promise. And it's polished. It's slick. It's, I was saying to you earlier, like it's up there with those big budget, international Netflix docos. How important do you think is those sorts of getting great cinematography and soundtrack to help you tell that narrative?
I think it's very important. Obviously, the story is what drives everything.
Sure.
But we're sitting there watching a film.
Yeah.
We're listening to a film. We're not listening to music. We're not reading a book. So, obviously, video and music is really important. Sound's really important. So, I spent about 3 months in pre-production with our cinematography cinematographer really honing in the look that I want.
Yep.
And we worked out what cameras were going to give us that look, which lenses we needed to give that look, exactly how we're going to light every interview. Obviously, it's a documentary, so a lot of things are just run and gun, natural light. It's like there's, I think you can even see me multiple times running over, picking up cameras in the background, and we're both just filming.
I didn't notice,
events,
but that's interesting. Yeah,
events as they happen.
Yeah,
and but that's just documentary filmmaking. You're there to document something. We're not setting it up and staging it. So a lot of the B-roll, obviously, you do to make it look nice, and we're retelling a story, and we're recreating stories. Like at the train station, we had the police there, and obviously then we can adapt a bit and bring on that fiction type filmmaking on board. But other than that, it was just pre-production. We all had to really know, I guess all the crew had to know my vision at all times. So then even if they had to do something on their own, then there's 5 ways we could do this. Yeah. They knew what I was kind of chasing the whole time.
Singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah.
I think it shows that you put the work in, because it does look really slick and polished. And nothing really sort of distracts from the story. Like, it all sort of complements it, which is great, talking to the soundtrack and the cinematography as well. I think one thing you mentioned, like, having to, run around the background and pick up cameras and just make stuff happen because you're in the moment and the interview's going well. Like, I guess with the difficult subject matter as well, everyone's at different stages. It's touched them differently. Some perhaps aren't willing to talk about it as much as others. You've really got to be ready to capture that moment when they start to open up.
Yeah,
it's not really the luxury of a take 2 or 3 or 4.
You can't recreate them moments. And I think that's what's so beautiful about our film and just general documentary filmmaking. Is that when you capture them real, authentic moments, they're just, people are going to relate to them because they're real. I know actors can do incredible jobs acting and delivering that performance, but sitting there listening to someone talk about the day they attempted to take their own life, you don't feel them emotions in any other sense. And that's just, I guess, what's just so beautiful about capturing them moments and using like film as the medium to do so.
Certainly, it pulls you right in from the start. It's quite confronting at the start, where it's straight into like one of the worst moments in Craig's life. How did you handle the well-being of those, even on crew? Did you have to talk to them beforehand about, like, how did you approach it?
I had a meeting with the team before we started filming, and basically just let them all know that there's support there if they need it, to come and talk to me. And everyone, I try really hard to build relationships just in life always, but especially with my crew. So a lot of the time we're in cars, we're driving in outback Queensland, and there was a lot of downtime with the crew that I got to have one-on-ones with, dinner times and whatnot while we're on the road, and everyone opened up in their own way and shared where they're always at, and just working closely with everyone and just letting them know that like everyone knew it. We were working on some, like, the subject matter's really heavy in some times, but it's really important, and I think everyone just knew the bigger mission of the film. And we worked through it quite well. Even like editing it was a process. So me and Oliver Lewis was the editor that helped me do it, and we're spending hours every day with our headphones on in the same room editing, and you're listening to people say like, I'm suicidal, or I was suicidal, and you're hearing these words through your headphones in your head for hours every day for months while you're editing it. So that starts getting draining, and you come out of your edit suite and like just hearing that all day, it becomes heavy. So I made a thing, we every hour we had an alarm go off, and we'd just stop, we'd put everything down, we'd get out in the sun, we'd do some push-ups or just do whatever we want, just keep that morale high and get some vitamin D. And that really, really helped just the whole editing process, because the whole time in them hard moments, there's always like on the hour every hour we'd just go have a break and just get some fresh air, get some sun, reflect, talk, bounce, and just go back in for the next part, because you're sitting there for 8 hours doing that. It just drains you.
It's very intense emotionally, apart from the skills needed for the jobs that you're doing. And it's a lot of time. You guys are in this little bubble working together as a tight crew. I think it's great that you're able to talk about it amongst yourselves, particularly with such full-on content. But important nonetheless. Did you collaborate with mental health professionals in pre-production, like to help you sort of shape the narrative or how you're going to approach the story, or was it really defined by Craig telling his journey?
No, it was more so. As close as we got to that, I guess, would be doing interviewing Professor Francis K. Lampkin in this short film.
Yep.
And obviously we sat there for an hour talking, and it's a 10-minute short film, and she's probably in it for 2 minutes of it.
Yep.
But there was so much information that she gave me there, and before we were filming, I was having conversations with her. Other than that, it was a lot of me. I pretty much had every minute in my head laid out structurally before we started filming. So my pre-production was very intense.
Yep.
So even the way I structured my questions for Craig, I was almost setting up him to answer in a particular way because I knew what I needed for each part.
Yeah.
And then I'd done the same thing for everyone else's interviews. Is I knew that this was kind of these minutes are going to be this topic and this part of it. So I was asking them questions to make it relevant for there as well.
Right. I see.
So it was it was probably more so scripted in the sense through questions in pre-production.
Okay.
Yeah. And just as that, obviously as we started getting answers and then things evolved and then real life events happened and then things had to shuffle around a little bit, but that narrative was kind of already embedded from the get-go. Okay.
That's great. And I think, the strong narrative coming from starting with Craig's story and being a strong component to the narrative, and then leaning on mental health professionals when it comes to statistics and other things to help provide that perspective helps those sort of Craig's moments really resonate in it, I think. Rather than perhaps doing all that work and finding out all the stats and talking to all the health professionals, then coming into it like a medical documentary, perhaps.
Definitely. And I think that's finding that balance of... we are telling Craig's story.
Yeah.
We do need all that extra information to help build up where them parts are. And if something's going to happen, we need to know how much more is at stake here. But there's a fine line between giving too much information and we're just sitting here just listening to statistics.
Yeah.
There's some shocking stats that didn't make it, and everyone can look them up if they want. They're all online. But when kind of not here to hear all these stats as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting because like the stats I quoted earlier, I mean, I remember them so vividly, and they resonated so well because of where they were placed in the documentary, and you sort of really engaged in Craig's story, and then they land in your lap, and you're like, oh my God, we want to talk about it, we want to get help from our friends and that, but in the mental health system, in the health system, there isn't a lot of resources available, so sometimes you're relying on your mates.
Definitely.
Or colleagues.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We are. And I guess that's just the thing about Australia. We're a very mate-orientated country.
Yeah.
Which is good, especially when these other parts aren't in place.
Exactly. I mean, certainly sensitive topic. I think what advice would you give other emerging creatives on dealing with such sensitive topics in filmmaking?
I'd probably say find the story, so know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these topics, if they're presented in the wrong way, can have a lot of backlash.
Right.
I think I've thought about that a fair bit, and I wonder if that's why there hasn't been a suicide prevention film or doco done before, because if people are worried about the backlash, especially everyone's got to be politically correct now and all this stuff.
At the end of the day, I think just when you start to talk, you risk offending someone. I mean,
100%.
You have to accept that no matter what you do, no matter how much you do in pre-production, you can't, no matter how smart you are, how many people you consult, you can't make something without offending someone at some stage.
Yeah.
You just can't make everyone happy all the time. I think once you get over that, it's a bit easier. But I guess, when you're layering this sensitive content that can be triggering for some, it's certainly difficult. So I appreciate where you're coming from and how difficult that might have been as a lens to look through as you're formulating it and editing it and everything.
Definitely. And I just think it's just one of them things we, as hard as it is, still go and do it, because if we're still waiting for people to do that, if people aren't doing that, we're still just waiting for these films to come out, essentially. I think people need to hear some of these stories and need to see some of these films to really understand what's going on
Mm.
and we can't silence people's freedom to speak and create their
Exactly.
art. That's showcasing this stuff.
Exactly. No, I think it's great, and I think it's not. I mean, making creative content in Australia, it's not easy. It's certainly getting harder in New South Wales. We just had budget cuts announced last week, and even the streaming quota has been pushed back to Q4 next year. Like, it's like, how many times can we get kicked? You know, It's hard to make some original content. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah.
So to be able to do that, and with such a great goal in mind of mental health awareness and getting more people to talk about it, I think hats off to you for that. But also, I mean, icing on the cake, like AACTA documentary, best documentary nomination. That's got to be a great feeling.
It is. It is.
And there's still, for those actors listening that can vote, there's still a couple of weeks left. Actually, I think they extended it till 4th of October. AACTA to nominate for docos. And I know you've got a roadshow planned. You're hitting cinemas across Australia. Yourself and Craig.
Me and Craig, yeah. So we're doing the Q&A screening tour, starting in our hometown Newcastle,
Of course.
and that's the first one. Then we're heading down to the Ritz in Sydney, and basically going on the road for the month. So we've got 12 cinemas. We're going right down to Melbourne, Adelaide, Canberra, Brisbane, Mackay. Cairns.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Keeping the conversation going.
Keeping the conversation going, giving people an opportunity to watch the film before it's released next year,
Mm-hmm.
and to then have that opportunity to speak one-on-one with Craig or myself and ask more questions about the film or Craig's own
Yeah.
experience. We've got Lifeline on board, so we're donating all profits to Lifeline.
Oh, well done.
And so there'll be people from Lifeline there on the night, and they'll be having a talk as well before the film starts. And there's support there if anyone in the crowd needs it.
Fantastic.
And just want to help that conversation really keep going and kickstart it.
I'm sure it'll be great for you, those moments when you stand up on stage and it's finally hit you that your project's real. It's alive now.
Definitely. Well, I just done a screen check at the Civic Theatre, so
Oh, yeah?
yeah, it's
Did that go as how you expected, or were there a few surprises, people commenting on things that you didn't think could resonate as much, or?
yeah, it's well, it was just with me and some of the crew. It's just
Uh-huh.
the technicians. So we
Uh-huh.
just wanted to go in and just play and get ready for Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
And but just kind of just seeing it
Yeah.
now in the empty theatre before
On the big screen.
Yeah, just kind of made it feel
It's
a
real.
little more real. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
finally, after all the work. When did you actually start? If you could remember the start of the journey.
See, I call the short film part of pre-production.
So
So if that's the case, August last year.
That's
real
actually not
filming.
too bad. Like,
Yeah.
considering from there to now, polished production, ready for a roadshow,
Yeah.
and AACTA-nominated. Like, that's decent turnaround.
Well, today's the 18th, so 10 days ago,
12
a
months.
year, we released the short film.
Right.
So we released it on the 8th of September last year,
Okay.
and now the feature will be released on the 20th of September this year.
Okay.
So it's about a year between the two releases of the short to the feature.
That's actually not bad.
Yeah, considering
that's-
I went backpacking for 4 months.
Well,
of that.
there's that. We'll call that a mental health break
yeah, yeah,
to keep on topic.
yeah.
Well, so what's next? Have you even thought about what's next? Have you got a few project ideas or anything developed?
Yeah, everyone's asking that, and I don't know if I've got a good enough answer. I do have a script written.
Okay.
It's a fiction.
Okay.
What
genre? Any clues?
It's a psychological thriller
Nice.
romance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's essentially a love story, but it's dark.
Dark love story.
It's very dark. So
Somewhat realistic, in my experience, but anyway.
yeah. So I've got an idea for another doco, but I want to see what opportunities come from this.
Yeah.
Taking it on tour. At the moment,
Yeah.
my focus obviously is promoting this. I don't want to think too far ahead yet. I want to make sure this lives the life that it needs to live, and
Yeah.
once that gets to that place, I'll really start thinking what I'm going to do.
Yep.
Um,
That's a great approach, and I think, because it is work.
Yep.
Just it's not just. I mean, you finished it and you're falling over the line. You're dragging yourself over the finish line, but it's not over yet. There's still a lot of work in getting it to market, and I think that should be acknowledged. Like even the roadshows, organising all that sort of stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
just happen automatically.
full-time job.
When you make a doco, those things don't just fall into your lap, those opportunities. So I certainly appreciate it from industry perspective. The work continues. But yeah, I'm sure because of just how slick it looks and the AACTA nomination, the topic as well and how you handled it, I think, a lot of people are going to be asking you, what are you doing next? It's a good question.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it's great to have people ask that. They're interested in what you're doing,
Definitely.
which is awesome. But in the meantime, as difficult as a topic it is, try and enjoy the success, I guess.
Definitely, yeah. Just bathing it all for a bit. And
You've got to for a moment, catch your breath.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great.
But yeah, I feel as if they'll like an opportunity will open up while we're on the road or something.
Yeah.
And we'll just.
You just never know where it'll take you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. Really appreciate it. For those of you in Australia, make sure you try and get to the Promise on those roadshow screenings to be able to see it and actually ask you some questions yourselves. Thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
Really appreciate it.
Two unemployed actors.